Hello and welcome to the OSU Sports Extra podcast. I'm Patrick Prince, joined as always by Dean Rule. This is Monday, February 6th. We're going to talk a little bit about basketball. The Cowboys continue their surge. We're going to get into a little baseball, and we'll update you on some wrestling, and we'll get into all of that after a short break. All right, Dean, let's start with basketball. We're about 1 month from the Big 12 season being concluded. Why don't you just kind of catch us up on where we are with 1 month to go? Just kind of how did we get here?
Well, Patrick, I don't think OSU was pleased with where they were at going into conference play, and they started off conference play pretty rough, 1-4 to start conference play. But where we sit as of today, Monday, February 6th, this is a tournament team, according to all the experts. They're currently just barely sneaking into the tournament right now. But with the way they're playing, I think that could improve a little bit. But yeah, as we sit here chatting, they've rattled off some pretty impressive wins and stringing together a little bit of a win streak in a conference that you don't really get to win too many of in a row.
Yeah, that's for sure. Pretty significant win last Saturday, Dean, in Stillwater against number 15 TCU. What was your top takeaway from that win?
Yeah, I think when you look at that, they got out to a quick start, which probably the best start they've had all season against a good TCU team, and they were missing two of their top players. So however you want to cut this up, I think no matter which way we look at this is a good win for OSU because TCU is not just a two-man team. They're a deep squad. They've got some guys even without Mike Miles and Eddie Lampkin. But you get out, you build a quick lead. They kind of controlled that first half. And as we've seen sometimes with this OSU basketball team, they come out of the second half and teams kind of get back into the game. And that's what we saw. What's different about Saturday's game is even though TCU got back into it, they were down 19 at one point, and they took the lead late in the game. I think the way to look at this is 2 months ago. If they played this game 2 months ago, they would have lost because simply they let these teams back in. It kind of it kills the energy, demoralized them, and they talked about this after some of the players talked about this after the game. What's changed is they're able to kind of keep their head on straight when teams claw back in. They're able to keep doing what they've been doing successfully, and that's what you saw. You finally saw that the byproduct of that on Saturday when the TCU got back into the game, but they didn't let TCU win the game. OSU was able to take control back and make some shots down the stretch, and finally OSU was able to close out a game that should have been closed out. Mike Boynton admits it after. He said, when you're at 19 points, the goal should be to get to a 25-point lead or a 28-point lead, not let TCU take a 3-point lead or a 2-point lead. So I'm sure there's still stuff they want to clean up there. But the big takeaway is, hey, they let a team back in, but instead of letting that team come away with the win, OSU figured it out, stayed the course, and they got the win.
Let's talk about Kalib Boone for a second. In terms of scoring, he's had kind of an up and down year. But the last 4 games, he's scored at least 18 points and scored 25 in the win against TCU. What's going on with his game?
Kalib Boone is an interesting case, Patrick. In the case of when he kind of started to figure things out and people took notice of what he was doing, and you'd ask Mike Boynton about it, and Mike Boynton wouldn't necessarily celebrate what Kalib Boone was doing because he said, hey, when you've got a senior like him who has all the talent and skills and intangibles in the world, it shouldn't be you're surprised when he has a good game. You should be surprised when he has a bad game. And so he talked about early on in the season, Kalib Boone's a guy who needs to become consistent for them. And well, you just told me 18 plus in each of the past 4 games. I'd say that's consistency, Patrick. I would. I think that's what Mike Boynton means. And against TCU, he scores 25, a career high for him. And TCU has some big dudes, Patrick. When I was watching on Saturday, that post was not an easy task, but he found a way, and he scored 25. I mean, this is where the offense is kind of running through, and especially getting Musa Cisse back down there. I think it's super important for the Cowboys because when Musa Cisse was injured, they'd run more of a smaller type of lineup with Kalib Boone down at center and Woody Newton as the 4. Now with Caleb or with Musa coming back, you're able to put Musa down low, who's 7'1" and a great defender, and keep using that stretch 4 role with Woody Newton, and then you're able to play them off each other. And we saw that against OU in Bedlam last week, Patrick, because both Kalib Boone and Musa Cisse scored 18 points. They played 18 minutes each. I think that's a pretty efficient clip, no matter how you cut it. And so, and you saw it a little bit against Texas Tech or TCU, excuse me. So I think they're getting healthy. They're figuring out this offense finally. I think using Woody Newton and Q Williams as their stretch 4s has worked well. Getting both centers back, using Kalib Boone as a center, because I forget which analyst said it. So now this anecdote's going to kind of suck, Patrick. But somebody said, one of the some national college basketball analyst said, I don't know if there's many guys in the country who could defend Kalib Boone right now. And I think that's a true statement because he's kind of firing on all cylinders for OSU.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about John Michael Wright for a second. He's a transfer from High Point, North Carolina. They kind of brought him in to run the offense. Why don't you kind of share what kind of year he's been having?
So yeah, High Point guy, he's somebody that I think when you look at him, you kind of wonder what his role is going to be because he's 6'1". He's a great scorer. He came from High Point with some crazy career numbers over there. They knew he had that threat. But you don't always see it with him with the Cowboys. Sometimes he'll have 18 points a game. Sometimes he'll have 2 or 3. He's got that 3-point shot that really is his bread and butter, I think. But he doesn't mind driving the basketball. And let's just look at the TCU game, Patrick. When TCU takes the lead, there's a timeout. The next 2 shots for OSU, John Michael Wright shots. He hits a 3, he scores a layup, he gives OSU the lead right back, and they don't surrender it at that point. So he's the facilitator. When he's not scoring, he's facilitating, and when he's scoring some big buckets. He's kind of got that. He's not afraid to take the big shots. And I think that's really important, especially when you get down to the tournament time where somebody's going to need to take the big shot.
Yeah. Let's talk about this week. So they got a home game on Wednesday against Texas Tech, and then they're on the road Saturday at number 11 Iowa State. Big opportunity there. Why don't you talk about that? What does this week look like for you?
Well, if we're ever going to call a Big 12 game a gimme, Texas Tech is the one I think you could probably say it for, Patrick. With that said, it's still a talented group. I'm not saying OSU should win by 20, but OSU should probably win that game if they're going to keep going. Iowa State is going to be the much tougher test because, yeah, you're hitting the road. OSU's played well at home. Road, not so much, especially in an environment like Ames, Iowa, with a top 10 team. That's going to be pretty important. If they win that one, then I think if the resume is not already good enough, that's going to pretty much put them. I think that makes you a lock if you win that. But we'll see, especially against an Iowa State team that beat the brakes off of Kansas last Saturday. That's going to be a tough challenge. And then speaking of Kansas, they're going to draw Kansas the following Valentine's Day, Patrick.
Right.
So Texas Tech should be an easy win, as easy a Big 12 win can be. But then you grab TCU again. So that's 3 teams who are widely regarded as top 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament in consecutive games. So OSU has an opportunity to make a statement here. They really do. I think that's how they should view it.
Yeah. So the key to winning Saturday at Iowa State is what? If it comes down to one thing, what is it?
Good question, Patrick. It is. I think the key really, if we're going to make it as simple as we want without drawing out a super long explanation, is feed Kalib Boone. I know it sounds simple and silly and not the best analysis, but I'm going to agree with I forget who said it, Patrick, but not many people can guard him right now. And if you can get it to Kalib Boone, let him make some plays, and he makes some great defensive plays too. Let's not underscore that.
Yeah.
I think that's your key.
Is Kalib Boone playing the best basketball at his time at OSU? Is that an overstatement?
No, not at all. This is
Okay.
Kalib Boone's best year at OSU.
Well, but not only that, I mean, is this his best stretch?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Okay.
You can look at the Cade year when Cade Cunningham was there. Cade just made everybody look great, though. But at the current, no, this past, let me see. We can probably start it against, I think we could almost start it against when they played Kansas State on January 10th on, has probably been his best stretch.
Is that the game he had 23?
Yep, that's when he said that was his former career high against Kansas State when he scored 23, and he's now followed up with a 25-point performance against TCU.
Yeah. All right, let's switch and talk a little wrestling for a second. You were at the duel last night in Stillwater. What were your takeaways from that?
Well, John Smith was very upset with Dustin Plott. So let me backtrack. Actually, if we just go off individual rankings, Patrick, OSU would have been favored in 3 out of 10 of those. So it wasn't the best draw for them. But one of them that they were supposed to win was 174. Dustin Plott is ranked number 6th, and he was going up against Andrew. I'm not going to say his last name, Patrick. I'm sorry. He was going up against the number 31 wrestler. He lost that. But the big takeaways, how about this? Luke Serber taking out Rocky Elam, the number 1 wrestler at his weight class. And I wrote a story on that, Patrick, for folks who want to get a little more information on that, a little more insight. So they got some upset wins. They had a couple upsets. Really, it came down to Dayton Fix at 133. He had to get a major decision, get 14 points, and then it went to criteria, and they got the win. So they close out the toughest stretch of their schedule here, Patrick. The past 2 weekends they've played against, or wrestled against, 4 ranked opponents. That'd be Northern Iowa, Iowa State, Michigan, and Missouri, and they went 3-1 during that stretch, and they had some gritty wins, some grind them out matches, some grind them out duels, and to walk away 3-1 there as you kind of hit the back end. There's a couple. You're still going to draw Iowa to close out the regular season, but between that you've got South Dakota State, Stanford, and OU. I think you'd probably say OSU's favored in those 3, leading up to the Big 12 championship. So I think this is good. I think they've proved a little bit they've answered some questions that you would have had earlier this season. And with that, I think they're figuring it out. And I think they've got some guys who can compete, maybe reach All-American status this March.
So just to remind people, Tulsa is hosting the Big 12 Wrestling Championships March 4th and 5th. At the BOK Center, and we're also hosting the NCAA championships at the BOK Center March 16th through the 18th. So lots of opportunity for wrestling fans to get their fill in Tulsa in March. Okay, Dean, let's get out of here talking a little bit of baseball. You had baseball media day in Stillwater today. What'd you learn from that?
We learned a lot, Patrick. We learned a lot, but also a little at the same time. It's hard to explain. I don't know. The point being, OSU is going to actually start off. This is kind of exciting. Normally, with baseball and softball, it takes a little bit to get into some big games, but they're going to start off down in Arlington, Texas next weekend, 17th, 18th, and 19th. And they're going to play Missouri, Vanderbilt, and Arkansas right off the rip down there in Globe Life Field in Arlington, where the Rangers play. And so that I think is going to be that's something I would pay attention to. In terms of, sometimes it's hard to get really invested right at the beginning of a season, but I think that's worth watching if you're a fan, just because you're going to learn a lot about what they want to do with this team A big question I know everybody has is what this rotation looks like. Josh Holiday didn't really have an answer for that. He said this early part of the season is about making sure people stay to pitch counts, stretching out the arms. So he said, ideally it might be you have 3 pitchers each pitch 3 innings in a game. Ideally, he said normally on a normal weekend you might see 7 or 8 pitchers throughout the weekend. He said in this early stretch it's going to be about 10 to 12. And so I think for fans wondering what that's going to look like, there's a couple names you can point to. Ryan Bogus, he's probably going to be a starter. They got a transfer that everybody loves from Long Beach State. I believe it's Jerron Watts Brown. He's getting All-American preseason honors. People are really excited about him. He'll likely be the ace. I think if we're just going to speculate here based on everything that I've heard, Josh Holiday's not confirmed anything, but he's probably going to be your Friday guy. Ryan Bogus could be somebody to look at. But all in all, I think pay attention to that first weekend if you're real curious about what this lineup and rotation is all going to look like in terms of start of Big 12 play, which begins March 17th against Texas Tech.
Very cool. Anything else going on today from the media day? Did you talk to players?
Talk to players. Got to talk to Nolan McLean, who is returning. So he got drafted in the 3rd round last MLB draft. He got drafted in the 3rd round by the Orioles. Couldn't work out a deal. He decided to come back to OSU for another season. Josh Holiday's real excited about that. Obviously, Patrick, if you're getting drafted in the 3rd round, you're probably a good player, believe it or not.
Yeah.
So he's going to be a big part, and he's an everything kind of guy. He talked a lot about his pitching prowess. That's something he was working on. He's throwing he can hit 100 miles per hour with some of his pitches. He worked on that this offseason, so he's excited about that. When he was asked about whether he sees himself in a starting role or closing role, he was more of a relief guy. Pitching an inning or 2 last year. He said he's open for wherever they need him. So that'll be good. And then, of course, Rock Riggio's coming back, who had a great freshman year for them. He's excited. He said it's just good to have a full off season with the team after, he started 53 games from Patrick as a freshman from out in California. He's a big personality. He's fun to talk to. So overall, I think people are excited about that team and what it looks like right now.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting spring between, baseball and softball at OSU. It could be fun to watch.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, let's end it there. You can download us for free on Google, Apple, or Spotify. Dean and I come at you usually once a week, although Dean, we're meeting on a Monday this week. Normally it's like Wednesday or Thursday or even Friday. So we decided to meet early in the week. So appreciate you listening. Dean, appreciate the knowledge, and we'll talk next week.
Of course.